Hey, podcast listeners. I'm Chris Morocco, food director of Bon Appetit and Epicurious, and host of the Dinner SOS podcast. Each week on the show, we bring the expertise of the Bon Appetit test kitchen to your kitchen. And this season, we've got a little something for everyone. We're debating whether spring produce is actually worth all the hype, solving your hosting anxieties, and helping you become a better baker with our BA Bake Club episodes on Dinner SOS.
I've always said that the best critics are almost like, consultants that you don't have to pay, hopefully. You are really considering somebody's work in a way that I don't think almost anybody else would have. I really am trying to get into the head of whoever is doing the restaurant, what they are thinking, what they're trying to achieve.
This is Taste. I'm your host, Matt Rodbard. Besha Rodell is a restaurant critic, columnist, and freelance reporter based in Melbourne, Australia. She is a James Beard Award winner and has served as a critic at Creative Loafing, LA Weekly, and The Age. It was really great to have Besha in the studio to talk about her life as a critic, which she details in all its guts and glory in a terrific memoir, Hunger Like a Thirst. We talk about her time working in New York City restaurants and writing The Shadow of Jonathan Gold. We also talk about the current reviewing scene and so much more. And at the top of the show, it's the return of three things, where Eliza and I talk about what is exciting us in the world of restaurants, cookbooks, and the food world as a whole. I hope you enjoy this episode. Hey, Eliza, what's up? How are you?
I'm good, Matt. How are you doing?
Great. Let's talk three things. What's your first?
My first thing is that I had really good momos recently, / just incredible Nepalese food. I went to this place called Nepali Banchagar, which is the winner of the Jackson Heights Momo Crawl for 5 years in a row, which says it all. Jackson Heights has, I think probably the biggest concentration of Momo restaurants anywhere in the city. And I think they're all pretty good, but this one was really special, just kind of juicy, perfectly spiced, delicious. I like boiled momos, but I also had the fried goat ones, which were quite good. And I also had something I've never tried before there called sel roti, which is this big loop of rice flour-based dough that is then fried. So it's crispy. It's almost like a savory donut or churro situation. And it comes with achar that you can dip it in. It's a very common festival food often in Nepal. And it definitely felt very celebratory and fun.
This Momo Crawl? That sounds amazing.
I know. Maybe we should do the Momo Crawl one year and participate ourselves. But I met the woman who runs the restaurant there, and she pointed to the sign on the wall that says 5 years in a row. I was like, do you even pretend to be surprised anymore?
No.
And she just kind of shook her head and smiled. I thought it was worth it.
I love this rec about Nepalese cuisine in Queens. It's so good.
What's your first thing?
My first thing is a restaurant that's in the Hudson Valley. I don't think I've spoken about it, maybe long ago, but it was a reminder I went recently. It's called All for One, One for All Farm in Goshen, New York. AOOA is what they go by for short, and it is an incredible place. It's from Ariane Dagan, who is the founder of D'Artagnan, which is a famous Hudson Valley producer of organic chicken. They were doing organic chicken before the FDA even recognized it, but mostly they're known for their foie gras, which was coveted by chefs around the country as the first domestic foie gras company. She left the company in 2022. And thankfully for those living near there, which is me, she has an incredible farm stand, which is more of a restaurant than anything, that she runs with her daughter, Alex. And it is really, really great to visit during the spring and summer seasons. I got to go up there. They have lots of chicken and foie gras menu items, and you can buy foie gras to go at the stand. But, I love that they have all these French classics that feels like you're in the Savoie or up in Normandy. I mean, there's dishes like there's a quiche that I think is one of the best I've ever had. They have a pot pie that's quite spinach forward. But mostly I had a sorrel soup, which felt very seasonal, very sour, and extremely satisfying. A lot of S's there. It's called AOOA. It's in Goshen. They're open most weekdays in the summertime, but definitely on the weekends you can have this great cafe seating outside. You'll like this. There is a pet goose that wanders the grounds. And
it's been saved from the fate of becoming
it is
foie gras.
saved, and it is not nice. And I kind of like that about it. It keeps you on your toes as a diner.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever met a nice goose, but I love that they have a patrol goose. That's so fun.
It's a patrol goose. What's your next thing?
My next thing is another home cooking update for me.
Yeah.
I feel like my whole life has changed because I just got an onigiri mold, which
Cool.
I've tried to make onigiri at home before. And I've seen people say you can, just use plastic or even like clean hands and try to shape it. But I've never really had success with that. But now that I have this mold, like I cannot be stopped from making onigiri. I have made onigiri every day for the past 5 days. I've been hanging out in the park all weekend, so nights out. And I just was basically, at first I did, like a tuna mayo one.
Yeah.
I did a pork floss avocado one, which was quite
so
good.
good. I like that call.
Which I just have pork floss around, so that was easy. And then I just started putting random leftovers that I had into the onigiri mold because there's always kind of cooked rice on hand in my fridge. And then I just, bring them with me to the park, and they're so cute. There's 2 sizes, and it's the smaller one I think is just so satisfying. And I really think I cannot be stopped. I'm just going to be making onigiri.
I love it. Do you season your rice?
Yeah. So, okay. At first I didn't because I just had the leftover rice. And I don't think it needed it. I think it was fine. But then more recently, I did do a little bit of seasoned rice vinegar mixed in with the rice. But then I think I maybe now I'm just complaining. I think I maybe over-seasoned it, and then it didn't hold together quite as well. So I'm still working on perfecting how much I want to season the rice versus just having the ingredients and the filling do the heavy lifting there. But I look forward to perfecting my craft.
Where did you get this mold?
Well, the truth is that my girlfriend's dad had it and he wasn't using it.
Oh, cool.
So she brought it back to New York after she was last visiting him. So I didn't have to buy it, but they are very plentiful to find online.
How's the steamer going? Do you have a steamer update?
Oh, the steamer is great. For breakfast this morning, I steamed a taro bun and then I put peanut butter and honey inside of it.
Taro bun, peanut butter, and honey. Lovely.
Which sounds maybe unconventional, but I will say that peanut is a very common ingredient in Taiwanese cooking, and a guabao is a pork bun that has peanut in it. So I think it made a lot of sense, and it was very delicious.
It sounds really, really tasty.
Yeah, the thing is, I'm eating too many buns now because I stocked up at the supermarket on a lot of frozen steamed
You have
buns.
a bun practice, pretty much.
Yeah,
bun practice.
Well, I'll keep you updated.
Please do.
What's your next thing?
My next thing is I talked recently about a tinned fish, nice cans that was sent to me. I have another one because they're flowing, and this one I really liked as well. It's called Blue Cove Branzino. It's from the chef Stephanie Fells, and Stephanie grew up in a household. Her father was French, her mother was Ecuadorian, and she lived in France during childhood and fell for conservaculture and really tinning around Europe. And Branzino seems like a little less expected fish that you're going to get in the tins. And, Blue Cove has 2 tins that they're selling now. There's one with olives and fine herbs, and there's one with piquillo peppers and herbs. And really, really loved it. It wasn't overpowering by any means. I think this is the tin fish if you're not into this, the fishier style of tinned fish. I really love it. It's called Blue Cove.
I've never had tinned branzino before.
I know.
Is it just a small fillet in the tin?
Yep, exactly. It's cut to tin size and just really nice stuff. A really beautiful fish.
That's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. What's your last thing?
My last thing, okay, I normally make up my own salad dressings, but recently I had at home the Via Carota salad dressing, which the recipe is Samin Nosrat, published in the New York Times. And it made me feel like maybe I should be looking at salad dressing recipes occasionally because it was so delicious. And it's a very simple green salad dressing. It has shallot, sherry vinegar, 2 kinds of mustard, although I just used one, honey, and then thyme. And I think that the thyme is the thing that I wouldn't have normally put in it at home, but it doesn't even really taste like thyme. It just kind of gives it this grounding, earthy note. And it's just so good I've been making huge leafy salads now that it's spring and we're getting fresh greens in, and it can go in the fridge for a while. So I just really like the salad dressing.
Sounds beautiful. I love honey in a salad dressing. I think it's undervalued in a salad dressing.
Me too. And I make a mustard honey salad dressing at home very often. That's my house dressing. And I thought it was perfect. But then I tried this version, and I feel like that I can do a little bit more tweaking. So
let me ask you a personal question. Is there ever a universe where you have bottled salad dressing in your house?
no.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
But I don't fault people who do because it's very convenient to have on hand. I think for me, I always have the components of a salad dressing in my fridge. I have vinegar, I have miso, I have, if I want to add that, I have olive oil. that's kind of all you need for a salad dressing. So to me, it would just be buying something extra. And it really takes a second to mix that up together if you've done it a bunch. But I know that like maybe also like a ranch or a different kind of dressing.
Yeah.
For me as a kid, making salad dressing was the first job my parents gave me. And so I
Same.
think I found it. Yeah, it's a very good, there's no knives.
Same. I remember early on shaking up and putting a ton of herbs, like way too many herbs in it.
Yeah, I had this phase where I thought it was a really good idea to put ketchup in the salad dressing,
Hey,
which I'm sure there's a chef out there that could do that right. But my
Let's find that
parents
chef.
just like grit their teeth and went through it,
yeah.
Do you buy bottled salad dressing?
Well, I was wondering, I don't buy a lot of it, but I feel like there's better salad dressings out there these days. I was wondering if you had a tip. There's this vegan one that I wish I remember the name. Sorry, listener, bad podcasting here, but there's some really good ones out there that it's kind of, if I'm feeling a little lazy, obviously with a ranch, it's better to buy the bottle. It's a little challenging to make sometimes. I typically make my own though, but I go lemon forward usually. That's been my kind of go-to recently.
Yeah, I love a citrus. I like to zest the citrus and then also use the juice in the dressing.
Yes.
I think for me, it would just be another thing to buy and then I would be worried about it getting bad, whereas I always have my staple ingredients. But if anyone is listening and they have a good bottled salad dressing rec, we would love to know about it.
We'd love to hear it, yeah.
What's your last thing?
My last thing is I haven't mentioned these guys in a long time, but I want to mention, yes, please. They just released their 339th roast, and I'm a longtime fan of and subscriber of them, and I just think that what they're doing a blend every week. They're doing a single origin. They're doing a decaf, and they're doing an espresso. So it's a cool subscription. You can get weekly, every other week, and so on. And I think I circled 339. This one was really, really banging. I loved this coffee blend from Tony Konecki and Sumi Ali. Those are the founders. I love these guys, and I think I just want to give them a shout. And I have one more coffee actually.
Okay.
I have like a coffee PS, and it's
what is it?
Bellingham, Washington, Camber. I got back on their single origin subscription, and those guys, man, their single origins are so great. And I think I found them in LA at a cafe. Maybe Kirakudo hit me to it, but I've been an on and off subscriber for several years. It's called Camber. I'm linking to Yes Please and Camber in the show notes. If you're looking for a coffee rec, you've come to the right place.
Can I ask, do you pivot to cold iced coffee in the summer or do you always do warm?
For my first cup of the day, I always do a Chemex. I never have been I don't love cold coffee in general. The only time I'll have it is if there's a really nice chocolate chip cookie in front of me at a bakery. I think that's when cold brew tastes the best, is when you're pairing it with a cookie or even a pain au chocolat. I used to be like super into cold coffees and cold brew and concentrates. But for me, it still is always a filtered coffee in the morning. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, at home, I'll use the Chemex and do pour over. And it's both Shirley and I having coffee that morning.
Yeah.
But this is like not good coffee practice. Sometimes I'll make like extra coffee and then I'll put it in the fridge and then I'll have it on ice later in the day. Or I think that like I'm really not a morning person and I really rely on coffee. And sometimes, especially if I'm like commuting to work, I get iced because it's easier to drink it faster and just have it like hit and get on with my day.
Listen, no shame to double brewing a Chemex and you have a little leftover coffee, put it in the fridge and drink it over ice, maybe with a little milk. Do that all the time. Like, listen, I feel like permission to do that, because I think why waste coffee, especially if you're buying nice coffees, and also it doesn't degrade that much and you still get to have plenty of that wonderful roasting that you've purchased or invested in. And I don't like that tendency when people shame people for chilling their coffee and drinking it. If the coffee is a good source, it's good coffee, man.
I think it's funny because obviously I spend a lot of time thinking about food and drink for this job. And so I know that there are like best practices, quote unquote, for enjoying coffee. But I think like it just goes to show how personal what we consume is, and that sometimes I don't care about it tasting the best. Like I just want to have it in front of me in a certain format. I even have like, this is also funny, but you know when your ice starts to taste bad because it's in the freezer with other things?
Definitely.
Like, no matter what I do, the ice cubes that I make taste bad, but someone brought over ice for a party that I had, and now I have these big Tupperwares in the freezer that are labeled good ice, that are like extra sealed, that has all of the ice from the bodega. And now when I make like a matcha or a coffee at home,
You go to the good ice.
yeah, I'll be like, hey, baby, you want a matcha with the good ice?
I mean, you got to have good ice for cocktails, for coffee. You got to have that good ice. I feel like there's probably an ice subscription you could get in New York.
Probably.
Oh my gosh.
I'm not on that level.
Not that level.
And it's not, to be clear, it's not like big ice cubes. There's nothing about the ice that's good except
good
the
ice.
fact that it doesn't taste like freezer.
It's just good ice that's not freezer ice, you know? Gotta celebrate the small wins in life.
That's what we're about here.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing your 3 things.
You too.
Besha Rodell, welcome to This Is Taste. Great to see you.
Thank you. So good to see you.
I'm really excited to talk about your book, Hungry Like a Thirst, this fair lyric. Many textures. I love it. It's your story, which is captivating. We're going to go over a lot of points. Known you for many years. There's some great essays in the middle of it, which I think is a cool form for the memoir. How did you decide to blend that linear memoir plus some of your great writing?
I mean, I think that part of it was just that, like, I got a bit bored of my own story. I know my own story, and I really like the research aspect of my work. Like, that I think is something that people don't really think about that much with restaurant criticism. They think it's just an experiential thing and knowing, about certain food, but it isn't. Like, there's a huge amount of research that goes into it, especially if you don't know enough about a cuisine, or, none of us can know everything. So there's always something to learn. And getting into the library and kind of digging through things, I just thought it would be really cool to kind of, the essays in the middle are about food, restaurants, food, service, and drinks. And I think those are kind of the parts that, as a critic, you are always looking at when you look at a restaurant. So I wanted to kind of break down the way that I think about that from a historical context, how I'm always looking for where we came from, as well as where we're going. And also, I really wanted the book to feel like a conversation. And I just end up having so many great conversations with other people in the business. So that is the basis of the cocktail, We Are What We Drink chapter, where it was just me and a good friend who is a bartender, bar owner, Greg Best, and the legendary Dave Wondrich, who is a, drinks historian, sitting in a TGI Fridays having this long conversation about like how TGI Fridays was so important to the cocktail culture of America. And so I just wanted to like bring in how I do my work, as well as, what the work is and what my story is. It might have, I hope it doesn't feel this way to readers, but it was a little shoehorned in there. I was kind of like, I want to get these in.
It wasn't forced. And we see a lot of memoir, and you see the seams sometimes, and I don't see the seams in this book. And I think breaking the form makes it really a compelling read. And I sometimes wonder if there is enough story for a memoir, and sometimes it drags. Yours does not, and we're going to get into it. I'm going to jump around.
Yeah.
The book is quite linear, but I'm not going to start with the beginning in Australia. And it's great. You also tell a little bit about your childhood, but you get into like the reviewing details right away.
Yeah, I mean, if there's an arc to the book, it is my career in America, starting and kind of ending when I got to Australia.
You've had an amazing career. We've had many critics on the show. I'm personally very interested in the restaurant critic as people. I think we have many on the show. Our friend Bill Addison has been on many times. He plays a role in the book.
He does. He's got 2 whole chapters.
Yeah, Bill's voice is everywhere. And if you've hung out with Bill, he's a very distinct voice person, and you nail it. But I want to talk about the LA Weekly job. You end up in Los Angeles, and you're taking the role of Jonathan Gold, who was living at the time. He had moved over to the LA Times. You're the LA Weekly critic as an out-of-towner. And I got to say, like, that's not easy. You're not from LA either. So you're jumping into this job. You talk about like moving to Silver Lake and just like having to like hit this job and having to fucking blog too.
I know. It was wild.
Rough hang. But talk about just following Gold, what that was like.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think anybody wants to be in the position of following the greatest of all time, right? Like, and there's not much doubt that Jonathan was one of the greats, if not the greatest, food writer as a critic. He was a very different kind of critic than I was, which was, I think, why they hired me. But I could not avoid being compared to him at every turn, and we could not have been more different in so many ways. He, lifelong Angelino, knew every street back and forth, had spent his whole life chronicling this city that I had never been to before I went out for my interview, which, and talk about overwhelming. I mean, it's just so vast and so hard to understand as an outsider. Now, having lived there for as long as I did, and, you know, I visit a couple times a year still, like, I just love it. But I love it because I'm an insider now, you know? It's like I know where to go to look for things. I know people who can tell me where things are, and I just didn't know anybody, and I didn't have any experience with it. And yeah, I was supposed to be writing 3 blog posts a day.
Yeah, it's painful to read those sections.
Yeah.
And you're just kind of like under-resourced. And I think a really beautiful part of this book, and we'll talk about Atlanta, it's about alt weeklies, a lot of it, alternative weeklies, which is an amazing, and some listeners, it might be history and not real memories, but just an amazing place to be writing about food. A place like the Village Voice, Creative Loafing in Atlanta, and LA Weekly. Back to Gold. I'm curious about putting your own stamp on it, because the thing about Gold, great writer, of course, but you just can't tell if the restaurant's good. My take, Foley, I've always said that he writes a great story, but very, very like kind of not assertive about good or bad, and also kind of always good. Just gonna say that quickly, but tell me, Besha, when you start the job, you're putting stars in, and you're actually reviewing restaurants.
Yeah, absolutely. I felt that LA really needed that, and you know, you can see it now with their LA Weekly is kind of a shadow of its former self, if that. Aren't, you know, I don't know if they're doing restaurant reviews or not, but there certainly aren't stars on them. The LA Times still does not have stars since Jonathan took them away. And you can see them, they've ceded some power to Michelin because they're the only people putting a ranking on it. I, you know, have a really weird relationship with rankings, as I think most critics do, but there's just no question that readers love them, and even chefs love them, just to know where they're, you know, are they getting to where they need to be? Some hate them, usually the ones who don't have as many as they think they should, but, you know, I do think that it's a really useful thing, and I thought about it in LA very much as like, how far should you drive to go to this place? Like, which was a nice thing to do for LA because, you know, fanciness is not LA's strong suit. So being able to give 4 stars to a taco if you should drive from the other side of town was really nice. But yeah, I wanted to, it's interesting because I think I looked at Los Angeles and said, this town right now does not have a weekly critic who is going into the newer places, or if a chef has changed, or if a major, you know, something has changed, and say, should you go here or not? That was just not there. Patrick at the magazine was doing it, but that was monthly. It was a longer piece. It didn't reach as far, you know. So I wanted to do that kind of old-fashioned critic thing in LA, and it worked, you know. I think that's how I found my voice there, and that's how I gained an audience there and gained traction there. It took a couple of years. Yeah,
I loved reading your reviews, and we became friends when you were a critic there, and I went on some meals with you, and you wrote about my books, and I think you just did all the work, and it's amazing. Back to LA at this time in the 2010s, I mean, it was at a time when, before LA was considered the best food city in America, like now it's undeniable. And I've said that many times, but what's it like being in a city that still isn't getting the full national attention that it deserves, but you're kind of parachuting in there, and you're going to like strip mall sushi, and it's like better than the greatest sushi restaurant in Atlanta where you came from.
Yes, 100%. I mean, it was great. There was things about that were fantastic. It gave me something to say. It gave me something to shout about. You know, I think that it would be so hard to come into a place like New York that is so well covered, that has so many critics that are all doing a pretty good job, you know, and to make
at
a
least
voice
at the time.
Yes.
Yeah, now it's much different.
But, you know, I think having that, here's something to say. And that was true in Atlanta, too. I felt like Atlanta really needed to find its voice when I got there. I feel like LA, it didn't need to find its voice, but it needed certain things to be championed that maybe hadn't been. You know, I think people think of LA as this kind of very clear dichotomy. There's like the Kardashian LA, and then there's the like street taco LA. But like most of us lived in between those things, and those things weren't getting covered that well, I feel like. The places that actual Angelinos go and eat. And obviously we all ate tacos, but there was a lot more going on there. And there was this really interesting kind of brigade of young chefs. This is the thing that has been the most exciting thing to happen in the last 20 years in food all over the world, I think. But LA was an obvious place for it to happen. These, the kind of second generation chefs who came up in, American restaurants or under the brigade system or whatever, but had, family culture from elsewhere afoot in each place and were really expressing that beautifully. That was all happening on the ground when I got there. And it was it was the beginning of places like Night Market. Kogi had been around for a while, but I think it was so exciting. And that was, it was a really rough transition to move to Los Angeles just for so many reasons. Yeah. But the food was the thing that kept me excited and kept me going, You
wake up in the morning and you're like, where am I going today?
I know. And you just can get in the car and just you could, my son grew up in LA and we've now moved to Melbourne, and he is always complaining about how Melbourne is everywhere you are in Melbourne feels like Melbourne. Whereas in LA, you can be in Japan one day and then in China the next day and Mexico the next day. It's and there's so many worlds within that city.
It's incredible when you talk about the chefs too, just the amount of talent that were kind of starting their careers. A little zoom out question. It seems like I was at a chef conference recently, and we're talking about New York just not having enough critics. And it seems it's almost like you should think about it as a public service for the restaurant industry.
Oh, absolutely.
To have a full, if you're a publication and maybe you're not making a lot of money from your criticism, you're not monetizing it. But think of further than that. And if the Times could have 2 full-time critics, if you could have an eater critic again, it's a public service for this industry that you care about.
It is. Deeply. I've always said that. If the best critics are almost consultants that you don't have to pay, hopefully. You are really considering somebody's work in a way that I don't think almost anybody else would have. I really am trying to get into the head of whoever is doing the restaurant, what they are thinking, what they're trying to achieve, how well are they doing that? Is there anything I could say that would help them do it better? Is there anything that they're not seeing because they're too close to it? But man, it is such an expensive thing to do. And
fair.
You've got the salary, you've got the budget. The budget is often bigger than the salary because if a city like New York to cover that is it's an immense task. You're trying to go back to restaurants multiple times. I don't think that there are many places that kind of, tit for tat monetize it in a way that is smart or workable, but at the same time it makes you a voice for the city in a way that I think it's very hard to be that in most other realms. Do you know what I mean? I think film criticism is global, even art criticism, it's a very niche thing, whereas restaurant criticism is about the way we live in our cities. It's about what our cities should be, what we want them to be, what we don't want them to be. It actually is really broad. And in Melbourne, where I'm working now, we put out a guide every year that has 600 restaurants in it, and they're all ranked. And it's just what a undertaking that we do. But also, there's just, I don't think people in Australia understand that that doesn't happen anywhere else. And it really is, we think of it as a public service for the city.
I wish more media executives would understand that, particularly ones who monetize other elements of food. And monetize the halo of the chef culture, but they don't actually do reviewing.
Yeah. I think people are scared too, and I understand why you do end up with these kind of feuds that happen.
Wait, a good feud is good copy, though.
It's great copy. I know.
And that's the business model. Yeah, it's difficult to be a critic. Listen, your job when you're putting yourself out there, you're up for any kind of criticism. It could be anything about your writing. It could be about you personally.
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah, no, it's not great, and I think it's it may be a little harder as a woman. I think that is partly just the way that female critics have been portrayed in movies and stuff forever. Yeah. But I think it just that people are a bit uncomfortable with, especially in such a male-dominated culture of chefs with a female with authority and power. But you have to have a pretty thick skin, and I've got a pretty thick skin over the years. I don't like the I hate the kind of when it gets to that point where you are in a rivalry with somebody or you've said something that somebody hates or that you have to say, whatever. But I also, again, think, it's a responsibility that you don't take lightly and you think through really hard and you do what you feel like needs to be said. And that's a position of privilege.
Let's go back in time a bit. In the memoir, you write about working in the industry, so it's cool that you've worked in many different stations and restaurants, and you have a deep understanding of restaurants. But you worked at this cool restaurant, some may remember, called The Grocery on Smith Street. I used to live near there, so I went many times, and it's a remarkable place, and you wrote very colorfully about it. Didn't it get like some big award out of the blue?
What happened, and it was right after I left, I remember calling the chef, Charlie, from North Carolina when I was pregnant because Zagat came out. And they got a 28 in Zagat, which is the highest. It was at the time the highest score in the city. It was that and, Le Bernardin and one other thing.
Right.
And it was just like it was so out of the blue. And Charlie was just like gobsmacked. I remember calling him and being like, what the hell? But, people who loved that restaurant really, really loved that restaurant. And it was such a great place for me to learn especially about wine. There was 13 tables there and they overstaffed it, which was not great for our tips, but was really good for the service. So, you would only have 3 tables. You would get to know them really, really well, which is the kind of fine dining model, but it wasn't fine dining prices. So, it really taught me the fine art of like the emotional intelligence that's needed to be a really good server, to figure out what your table needs or wants from you. Do they want the song and dance? Do they want to be left alone? And the food was great. And, it was a very weird kind of dynamic there, as I think it usually is if you work for a couple. It was a couple at the time who were running it, and we all got caught up in their
own personal dramas.
Their drama. I mean, every couple has their own psychodrama, and you just become part of that if you work in, especially a restaurant that's that small.
It's tiny, yeah.
And they fired me multiple times, and then would like rehire me, and it was like family, slightly abusive family, but family.
Well, I wanted to ask you about it mostly because it's a time in Brooklyn. It's like 20 years ago, basically. Like when you walk Brooklyn now, the streets of Brooklyn, I mean, it's like unrecognizable. Like what's it like working in a well-rated but like neighborhood restaurant on Smith Street in early 2000s?
It was so great. And I just, again, feel like I was there at this exact right moment where Brooklyn was starting to become there was very few restaurants that people would go to Brooklyn for at that point in time.
Yeah.
Like, I remember I had an aunt who was living in Washington Heights at the time, my father's sister, and I took her to Brooklyn, and she had never been there before. She had lived in New York City for 30 years at that point. And, people still had never been to Brooklyn.
It's wild.
It was wild, yeah.
I mean, I will fully admit I lived in the East Village in 2002 and 2003, and I literally never went to Brooklyn.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. And
it's wild how it's
but,
changed.
it was the grocery had opened, Aldi La had opened.
Yeah.
I was there when Blue Ribbon Brooklyn opened, which was just a huge deal. So just to be able to see it become what it was becoming right from the ground, and just it was such a great education for me. I write in the book about how I made a venture, went to work at Savoy in Manhattan, and just hated it. I hated the pace of it. I hated the competitiveness of it. I hated that we were, it was a great restaurant.
Wow, what a great restaurant.
I learned so much. Yeah, I learned so much, but I was in over my head, and I realized that I don't want to do that kind of restaurant work. I want the kind of restaurant work where you can make a connection to the customers. And I think that's why people loved grocery so much. It was an easy place to be a regular. It was an easy place to feel like you were taken care of.
And like average check at that time, it's like
it was $90 or something.
Yeah.
If you drank wine, it was crazy. Yeah.
It's crazy how things have changed.
Yeah.
Well, this leads to kind of the start of your writing career. And I wanted to share this memory, Time Out New York is where I got my food writing start as well in 2006. And you write about writing early articles for Time Out New York and the team there, and also eGullet.
Yes.
I love that you were on eGullet in the early 2000s. Talk about actually your early writing career and how you kind of started. You transitioned from working at restaurants to actually writing about them.
So I was going to college at the New School which was why I had moved back to New York, and I was going for writing and literature. But I know, and I was doing the things that you're supposed to do, pitching, kind of cold pitching people. I got this internship at Time Out, which was a lot about just fact-checking listings at the time. You know, it was kind of pre-internet almost, and so Time Out was very much about the listings. And every now and then they would throw me, you know, a small story to write, a blurb or something like that. But I also was working in literary agencies but I kept on going back to the restaurant. Like, I kept on going back to the grocery and taking shifts. And I realized it was partly monetary, but it also was just because I really didn't want to let go of that conversation around food and wine. And I just kind of had this, light bulb moment where I was like, I really need to marry these two things, the two things that I'm doing with my life. One is around words and one is around dining. And so I realized that I should probably be trying to be a food writer if I was going to be trying to be a writer. And I applied to be the food writer at Time Out, and that's a whole rigmarole story.
It's a little internal politics.
Which didn't happen. But then I got pregnant, and so it's funny whenever I talk to young journalists about like, oh, how did you get your start? I'm like, I got knocked up and dropped out of college. That's how I got my start. So I was kind of lurking on eGullet a lot, which was, this great forum that was just real punchy and, a lot of dumpling bros on there fighting it out.
Dumpling bros. Yeah, it was like a lot of like reply guys. People,
yes.
That was the thing. And
yes.
Honestly, like eGullet in the early days was where you found the good shit.
Absolutely.
Like there was no social media, obviously, and really very few internet sites that were writing about food. But man, you found like people who were so passionate. Yeah, a lot of dumpling bros. Like, I'm going to go around the world in a day.
Yes, exactly.
Stuff like that.
And so I just got on there, and there was this restaurant that had opened called Bistro St. Mark's that had got a review in the Times. And honestly, it was a big deal for a Brooklyn restaurant to get a review in the Times those days. And I went back kind of 6 months after they had opened and had just an awful experience there. And so I wrote a review of it. And it was funny because like a couple of the people on eGullet, especially because I had been a lurker, I wasn't somebody who had like a lot of posts or anything. And they were like, who are you? Like they were like, no, this is somebody who's like a writer that is like, which was nice.
Like
that was
slumming it in the section.
Totally. And which was a nice thing. It was fun. And my mother was living in North Carolina at the time. She knew an editor at the Alt Weekly there, and she sent him that review, and he really liked it.
From the eGullet post, which is really just a post.
Yeah, it was just a post.
Yeah.
But and he really loved it, and I ended up back there when I got pregnant. We moved back to North Carolina. That's where my mother was living at the time, and where my partner's family lives still. And I eventually just, because of that post on eGullet, started writing for the Alt Weekly in North Carolina.
And this is where your career takes a really cool change of direction, and which I love the way, if you care about food writing, especially your memoir really covers an era that isn't written about. And this alt weekly culture. You meet Bill Addison, who's the critic at Creative Loafing. He's up in North Carolina doing a story. You guys hit it off. I mean, obviously Bill's Bill, so you're hitting it off with him. And you end up replacing him because he moves on to San Francisco, and you're kind of, you parachute into Atlanta as the critic. And I want to hear about the time at Creative Loafing. It's another wonderful city. Atlanta is one of our greatest food cities, and you get to cover it robustly. But this story takes a little bit of a darker turn, not personally, but just the economics of it kind of caught up. The economics of Alt Weekly's caught up.
Yeah, I really came in at the very end of the boom era for Alt Weeklies, and that ended with the launch of Craigslist, basically. It was also, the beginning of social media, the way that I kind of got into criticism and was able to be anonymous is because it was like right after Facebook had launched, and I was never on Facebook. My face was never on Facebook.
Yeah.
And so, I got there just as like the crash started to happen, I feel like, and I got to watch that in real time. The owner of the paper, and, that paper was owned by this family. There's all this kind of like Shakespearean drama around the family and hostile takeovers, sons taking over their mothers and stuff. But the owner of the paper at the time, borrowed $40 million within the first year I was there to buy the Chicago Reader and Washington City paper. And then Craigslist happened. And,
a tough
and
time
everything.
to be buying print.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so the paper eventually got bought by venture capitalists and kind of decimated. And that, that's the story of alt weeklies. Like somebody decides they want to be a mogul and borrows too much or, does something foolhardy. We were all very pressured into, you have to have blogs, you have to, do all this online stuff. But nobody had really thought about
how to monetize
it at all. And, it's one of the things that really still makes me crazy about the internet is I don't think people in media, apart from a couple very, very smart publications, have figured out how to make the experience pleasurable for readers and still make some money. You think about the glossy magazine. You read the glossy magazine in part because you like the ads. Do you know what I mean? Like
Definitely.
You're not going to go through 100 pages of ads if you hate them. Whereas online, nobody has figured out how to make people enjoy it. And
the display ad is dead. That's the whole conversation. I think there's ways to monetize your publication and keep it whole. But let's talk a little bit about what you found in Atlanta in the restaurant scene. East Atlanta is having a big moment. You're seeing, not just Buford Highway, but like places even outside in like Duluth.
Yeah.
What a cool city to cover.
Yeah, it was weird because when I first got there, I feel like Atlanta really didn't know what it wanted to be. It was kind of trying to be like Miami, but no beaches, or Vegas without casinos, that kind of big glitzy restaurant kind of ruled supreme. No sense of place. And it was really weird because in terms of music, it was already definitely like the heart of the South. Like that, obviously Nashville for country music, but for hip hop, it was Atlanta, and it was a cultural mecca. It was where all the cool kids in all of the South want to move to.
Black culture in Atlanta is it's
Black Hollywood. It's
exactly.
It's everything, and so it was really weird to see that not being reflected very much in the restaurants. There were a couple of exceptions, Watershed, Bacchanalia, places like that. But when I got there, I really longed for more of a sense of place, and I hammered that quite a bit. And then you started to see people like Stephen Satterfield, Miller Union, Holman and Finch,
The Optimist.
And it I was there for this period of time where it became what it was supposed to be, I feel like, and what it still is, which is, definitely to me still the capital of the South. And you can go there and eat Southern food in so many different contexts from, very, very ground level on up to super fine dining. And it's just, it's one of my favorite cities in the world. I adore it. Yeah.
I adore it too. I would love to live there.
Yeah.
I talk to my wife tomorrow about this all the time. I would so live there. It's so green.
It's like a city in a forest.
It's
I
in
love
a
it.
forest.
Yeah.
It's culturally interesting. The people are amazing. I love it. And really, a lot of East Coasters shade it because they've never been.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. And also, because I was there in my early 30s, it's where most of my friends live.
Yeah.
But there's nothing to do there media-wise. There's no jobs.
Challenging now. Yeah. It's definitely eroded a bit. I want to zoom out a little bit. You wrote a brilliant kind of, it was an essay or it was just a lot of thoughts about chef culture. And I've never thought about chefs this way. And you really crack a code here. You are lumping chefs into two categories, the devotional versus the ego-driven. And it made me think, and I just went through a list of chefs in my head. I'm like, who are these people? Are they devotional or ego-driven? Besha, explain what you meant there.
So I think that the easiest kind of way to look at it, and there's obviously a lot in between, but, there's the Evan Funke who's in LA who's I am going to learn how to make pasta like the Nanas in this tiny village. I am going to devote my whole life to learning how to make pasta. That's the devotional, where you are just devoted to a certain cuisine and getting it, absolutely right. I think, Andy Ricker is, you can think of a lot of folks like that. And then on the opposite end of it, I would say is, Jordan Kahn at Vespertine, which is I am going to reinvent the whole idea of food. You are going to eat it and you're not even going to feel like you're eating food. It's coming straight from, my muse. It's coming from my genius. And I think that, there are some there's quite a few chefs that have layers of both, but I think most chefs, it's usually kind of one or the other.
Yeah.
And I love both of those things. I think that, there is brilliance in both of those things, but it's a very different approach to cooking.
It seems like in New York now, and I live here, so I know a little more than yourself, but like there's more devotional.
Yes.
And I think it really dovetails with just so many chefs embracing culture and their own, or it could be others, but mostly just this idea that I'm going to study, I'm going to travel, I'm going to bring, regional Vietnamese cuisine and cook it the way that I want to do and represent my culture. It seems like that those are the types of restaurants that at least the media and listeners are more into than these broad proclamations of like changing the concept.
Sure. I mean, I think that the thing to be said about that is like that's a risk that is it's really risky to do that. It's much safer to say, I'm going to do this thing that there are books about that can teach me. There are people who can teach me. There are things that I can learn. But yeah, I think both are necessary to kind of push culture forward and to keep diners interested. And I certainly, if I think about the way I want to eat most of the time, I would rather go eat a really good pasta or a really amazing, Southern Thai curry that is comforting and just done really beautifully than I want to eat, something that is like an alien spawn or whatever. But when the person does that alien spawn well, that is incredible. Like that's when food kind of changes. And but I do think it's easier to get tripped up with the ego-driven food.
For sure.
Yeah.
I wanted to give one example. Susanna Cups at Lola's in New York, like clearly a devotional chef. I think of her as cooking her Southern heritage and her Asian heritage two together, but like somebody who just works 80 hours a week towards the perfect salad or the sourdough cracker that is using their own methods of fermentation to get a great flavor.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also kind of relate to that because of my penchant for like research and like being obsessive about something. I think the other kind of food you can do that too, but it's like all in your own head. It's like, classic jazz or improv jazz,
Yeah, there you go. That's good. I also liked, Besha, you were very early to write about American heritage restaurants. You wrote loving tributes and well-researched essays about Waffle House, Cracker Barrel. You write about Howard Johnson in the book. And I think food media has like caught up, and it's almost like a cottage industry to like reflect on why TGI Fridays is cool. But you were really early, so I want to give you credit for somebody who is not born in America, but you're somebody who's really interested in American food history.
Yeah, I think that not being born here is probably part of why I was interested in it first. I've always been just fascinated with American culture as a bit of an outsider, and it was always very baffling to me when I arrived as a teenager. There were so many things that I was like, oh, I thought that was just from the movies, but you guys really have pep rallies or whatever. I just got really interested in, and I'm still really interested in the way that most people actually eat as opposed to the way that food media portrays the way that we eat, and a lot of it is just so fascinating because it's all about like wars and commerce and highways and these much bigger cultural push and pull that we have. It's not about some genius chef coming along and writing a cookbook that everybody bought. That's not that interesting of a story, frankly, to be like, oh yeah, Julia Child came along, she was on TV, and then people started cooking French food. Like, great, but like that's not nearly as interesting to me as being like, these things happened because they invented refrigerated, cars on trains and were able to then do this. Like, this is how beef became so prevalent in the Midwest.
It's
like,
not a media story.
No.
It's a story about the real foodways of America.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, so much of the way that households eat is because soldiers came back from certain wars with certain proclivities, that kind of thing. So that to me just became really fascinating very early on. And it's still just one of my main kind of muses in life as a writer, is to look at those things and to dig into them and to find those weird little stories. It's so fun. And it's been fun doing it in Australia too, because nobody has done it there. So it's like I get to start again. I get to go and say, like, why do we have canned beetroots on everything? And,
Yeah.
and like figure it out. And nobody's ever done it. So that's.
Speaking of beets, you wrote a great story about beets and goat cheese for taste.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and I was looking back. I totally forgot you wrote a bunch of stories from 2018 for taste. Yeah. They're great. I'm going to link to them because they're really, really great. Let's work on more stories.
Yeah, totally.
I love collaborating with you. I love it. Later in the book, and listener, like, buy the book and read the whole thing. You get this story, and there's this character, Michelle. You only give her first name, and she's part of your life. Going back to North Carolina, and you write about you had a difficult beginning to your relationship, and then you eventually became close. And this is Michelle Posine from 20th Century Cafe in San Francisco. Absolute legend in the game. So you kind of do this slow play and reveal who Michelle actually is. And really, that section is a must read because it really is real talk about what it's like to run a restaurant that strives for perfection, that works with staff from many different generations, and you could even say millennials and Gen Z. And the difficulties of it. And now the cafe closed full time, but now there's pop-ups, and I'm sure there's going to be some updates. But I love her work. I'm a huge fan just from going to 20th Century Cafe. But why was it important to write about Michelle's story?
So I feel like that chapter is one of the reasons why I felt like I had to write a book, because that chapter initially I was trying to write a story about her for the San Francisco Chronicle. And I ended up writing this thing that was too long and too weird and just didn't fit like it could have fit as a New Yorker story, I think. That's the only place I could think that it might have run in its original form. Just too weird for a daily, too whatever. I wanted to think about this one person's story, this one person who had this, was just ahead of her time in so many ways over and over and over again. She was, a pastry chef before that really was getting any, it just wasn't being covered the way that it is covered now. She heard that Michael Bauer didn't want to review her when she opened 20th Century Cafe because it was not open at night. All of these kind of old school things that we just don't pay attention to anymore. Like there are no rules now about what we cover and what we don't. She was really trying to, after 20 years in this business of dealing with so much misogyny, so much abuse, bad money, bad vibes between front and back of house because of the pay disparity. She was trying to solve all these problems within her own business and really couldn't. Like, she couldn't. And it was so upsetting to me because I look at this industry and I look at the people in it who have the right ideas and the right heart. And Michelle is not somebody who's like super PC. She's just like, make it sluttier. She's and she is really has no time for the kind of, we have to have better work-life balance. She's like, if you want to be good at what you do, this is your life. Like, deal with it.
Very cancelable language.
Yeah, totally.
That you portray in our current time, but she clearly doesn't give a shit.
No, she doesn't. She's so punk rock. She's the most punk rock person I've ever met. She's amazing. But like, she also just, I think that she's right. Like, nobody has figured out how to do it without the hard work. Yeah. Like, it is a hard job. And if you sign up for it, and I know it's kind of this kind of tired cliche of like, the military and whatever, but you don't sign up to go to the army to have like good work-life balance or get paid very well. Like, you do it because you are called to do it. And I think that's how she feels about kitchen stuff. And she really just struggled with being a boss, struggled with, and I could see it from so many angles because I had been, the receptacle of her wrath, and it was really frightening. And, but I also think I know how hard she tried. I know how much she wanted to do it right. I know that she had all of the right intentions and she just couldn't make it work. And I'm heartbroken about it. But she's happy. She's like, I'm like so much happier than
She wrote
I
a
was.
terrific cookbook a few years back,
Her cookbook
which I
is
love.
amazing.
Yeah, the book is great. And she's doing pop-ups, it seems.
Yeah,
so
she's doing pop-ups. You can still buy the honey cake from her. She's
legendary cake.
Yeah. I mean, which she invented that you see everywhere in the world.
You write about that. Let's stick there because you write about this idea that, like recipes were definitely being ripped off. You're seeing them in lots of cities. I mean, when you talk to her, how did she feel about that?
She said, I did a therapy about it. She's like, I'm supposed to be happy that my ideas are so good that people would want to rip them off. Like that she's very conflicted about it. And you can see her, she will go on Instagram if people post, the New York Times often posts the recipe that Salmon did a version of for and Michelle will go on there and be like, come on, like you got to at least name me, like it is my recipe.
That's
crazy. and if you click on it under the recipe, it does say that this was her recipe originally, but she also is like, look, defending the honey cake would be a full-time job, like I've let it go.
She's let it go.
Yeah.
Michelle, come on the show. Like I want to talk to. I want to.
That would be amazing.
Let's have let's.
She is the best, and she's very good. She has very good chat.
Yeah, well, you wrote really great things about her. I'm really honest, and this is an honest memoir, not an easy read, and that's good. That's a good thing. I have to ask you, in 2018, I think you had emailed me when you were doing this, but you were hired for, I would say, in history, the most insane, probably the most misguided reporting assignment in the history of food writing. You were tasked with writing about 30 restaurants around the world and really trying to balance it out looking at the globe. And you write very brilliantly about this time when you're being asked to make these visits and you have this crazy deadline. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, misguided. We started doing it and we did not know what we were doing.
Well, okay.
So that was the thing, right? I stand by the idea of it. And the idea of it was to take on the world's 50 best, take on Michelin, and really do a guide.
Needed.
Yes, it's very needed. And do a guide that was like, if you were in this city, in this part of the world, where is the place you should visit? Like, where's the one place you should visit? And we had this amazing panel, global panel. So it wasn't like I was having to go in.
You were given the list.
I wasn't given I was given a long list.
Oh, I see.
And I would go to the restaurants, and from the long list, I was supposed to choose. But very often I'd be in a city and be like, well, I've been to these 3 places and none of them fit, So let me do some of my own research quickly and try to get somewhere that does. We were trying to balance it in terms of, there's very few restaurants in Africa on those lists. Like, let's actually take a look at Africa. So I stand behind the idea behind it. The first year we did it especially, it was just a shit show. I mean, I was in, I think it was 300 hours on a plane, like within 3 months, basically.
Talk about an itinerary.
I would get up in the morning. I wouldn't know where I was in the world. I would be like, oh, what day is it? Where am I? I would get on a plane. I would land in some city. I would get out. I'd be like, I don't know. Do I need cash? What currency is it here? And I would get in a cab and go to a hotel and shower and go to a restaurant, and then come home and write notes and pass out and do it again.
Yeah, and talk about where you were talking about Beirut to Croatia to South America to America.
Yeah, it was, the craziest was I was doing this in March of 2020 when COVID happened. And I write about how I started in Brazil and then I went to Miami and then to Jamaica and then to Houston and then to Puerto Rico and then to New York City. And that was all within a week.
That's insane.
It was so crazy. I entered the U.S. 3 times in that first 2 weeks of COVID and didn't get COVID somehow. Yeah. And then kind of hunkered down in Brooklyn with my friend Osai for a few days. And, that was when everything was Jean-Georges was calling and being like, yeah, we're not, the reservation's getting canceled here and there. Yeah. And then they sent me home, and it was good that they sent me home. I think I was on the last, couple of flights before Australia closed its borders. But that kind of itinerary was the itinerary. That's how we did it. It was, it was just wild. I mean, and in the middle of all that, for instance, in Jamaica, I had rented a car and was kind of driving across the top of Jamaica, and there was these flash floods and mudslides happening all around me, and I had never driven in Jamaica before. It was
You're
just
solo.
Yes, I was by myself, and it was just there was so many instances like that where I was in Morocco and got dropped off at the edge of the Medina with my baggage and like my phone wasn't working because it's Morocco and I don't know where to go and I don't have any Moroccan money on me, like it was intense. It was really, really intense. And I kind of knew it would be, and it was a terrifying thing to take on, but it's also the type of thing you don't say no to.
Hell no. I would never say no to that. Are you kidding me? You
No.
cannot. If you're interested in writing about food. I mean, did you end up netting out at a really interesting place with taking on World's 50? What happened? Is it still going on this list?
Not that I know of.
Yeah.
I mean, I have some Machiavellian plans in my head,
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, I just need a sponsor. Somebody sponsor me. But,
Yeah.
because I think I know how to do it right now. And I do think that it's really necessary. And the thing that was beautiful about that list is because you look at those lists, and I went to so many of those very fancy restaurants that are at the top of those lists, and some of them are pure misery, I gotta say. They're just like not fun at all. And because it was in partnership with Travel and Leisure, it was very travel focused, and I loved the idea that like because of that, we could say, all right, we're in Beirut, here's this amazing hummus restaurant you can go to for breakfast, and have that on the same list that we had Noma on,
Amazing.
And because not all cities are great for fine dining and not all travelers want fine dining. There was a certain number of those types of restaurants on that list, but I think it was less than half, certainly. And there was just a lot of stuff that was, there's a taco truck in Tijuana. You don't go to Tijuana to eat, at a fine dining restaurant.
Those places
you shouldn't
get missed in the list. I mean, the World's 50 is all about PR. I mean, it's getting and tourism board is getting these voters to those locations.
Yeah,
junkets.
Absolutely. And I saw that so firsthand when the World's 50 Best came to Melbourne. They did it a couple of years ago, and that was the first time I ate at Attica. And like they had just booked out the whole restaurant for the whole weekend and were just shoving voters through there. And I got to say, I used to vote for the World's 50 Best. I don't anymore. You're not supposed to say that you do, but I think it's okay now that I don't anymore. And they have been trying to say, please put things on here that are, that do whatever. You can put a taqueria on it. It's okay. But because it's a popularity contest, that's never going to work. You have to, it's just they tabulate the votes. And one of my favorite restaurants that ended up on that list that we did for Food and Wine was this place in the jungle in Tabasco. And I had to take a plane to this weird city that had nothing going for it and then get in a cab for 40 minutes. And then, a restaurant was amazing. There's just no chance in the world that could get on any of the radar of any of these other places.
It's amazing and how that changes those restaurants when you get on an international list and it comes out and they're there.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of surprises that World's 50 tends to not have as much of. They have sometimes and give them some credit. But I mean, the voting is all about you have to physically go to the space to vote. And so to get to the space, you have to be either sent there by a tourism board or it has to be in a city that has this apparatus.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen it in Australia in recent years. We used to have quite a few restaurants on that list. And because of COVID and because our borders were closed for so long, we have nothing on the top 50 now because people just weren't there. It has to be it's why New York is so highly represented, why Paris and London are, there are great restaurants in those cities, but you visit those cities. Everybody visits those cities. So it just, I would love to do it again and do it right. And I know how to do it. I've got it all in my head.
We're talking on the show. You just need a sponsor to give you X amount of money, and you have a formula, and you have a judging kind of criteria. Is there one judge, or are there multiple judges?
I think that there are multiple judges, and that there is probably one or two kind of final judges. It should be somebody's list. It should be somebody should be able to stand behind it as a person or a couple of people. I think rather than this, there's too much safety in the kind of we just let the voters vote. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
So I think that somebody should have to be able to speak to it. And why? Why were these things on this list?
How much money do you need?
Oh,
is it
couple $1 million?
Couple mil, it's like a $2 or $3 million investment.
Yeah.
And how do they monetize it as a brand? They want the halo to be part of this really well researched and accredited list.
Look, World's 50 Best has been pretty good at monetizing it.
Yeah.
There are all kinds of ways you can monetize it.
Yeah.
But to me, the obvious is credit card companies because you give your card holders access to these places. And, those type of really high-level card holders are really invested in those type of experiences, and those companies are already doing that type of thing for those. It's a tiny amount of money for those people, And I think, you think about Michelin, it's a tire company. They wouldn't have been doing this for the last 100 years if it wasn't working for them really well, And that, I mean, God, how much money do they spend? That's got to be tens of millions of dollars. So I think that there's a way to do. It would depend on what company it was. I think it could be an airline company, it could be a hotel company, a credit card company makes the most sense to me. Yeah,
I mean, it goes back to the earlier sentiment how reviewing restaurants is a public service.
Yeah,
and if you're in the restaurant game, but maybe you're not writing about restaurants, but it's the halo effect of like the rising food culture. It's like, okay, maybe it's not going to be monetized to the dollar, but you're investing in restaurants and investing in restaurant criticism.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think, that is, for me, also, I feel like because advertising is so wonky now and nobody really knows how it works and how it should work, the easiest thing is for the people who actually benefit the most from the content should just straight up pay for it, So I think that's the Diageos of the world. That's the credit card companies of the world. There's something to be said for like Rolex or whoever, but but that's a different thing.
Luxury's a little different. Yeah. I think the list will not tip to only luxury.
No, it won't.
And that's the whole point. But I think like a financial services company, Melvin, let's talk about what you're doing now, because it seems that you are very active working in food criticism and editing. I haven't been down in years. I can't wait to visit you.
Yes, come see. Everybody should come see me in Melbourne. Melbourne's just the best. It's so good. Love my hometown. I'm the critic at the daily paper there, basic old school critic job and
review restaurants. Stars on it.
We have hats, which are annoying. But
wait, you have hats? Are these like, what kind of hats are these? Like,
it's basically, so we have it's a scoring system out of 20, and it's really frustrating. My paper's going to be so annoyed that I keep saying this, but like, because it's like 10 for food, 5 for service, 3 for like experience, and 2 for value. And we do that. It makes it very difficult for us to then give. And then the hats are at the very top. So it's like if you get a 15, you get 1 hat. If you get a 16, you get 2. And if you get an 18, you get 3 hats. So those are kind of like Michelin stars. The hats are, but the most exciting things to eat in Melbourne are not necessarily at that high end all the time. So it makes it very difficult. So now we have a critic's pick that is like not scored. It's just too confusing.
Wait, there's a critic pick. So you just get to pull one out yourself as a critic?
If it scores pretty low, but I love it, then I don't put a score on it and I just say it's a critic's pick. Because, we're starting to get almost okay tacos, like in Melbourne.
Australians love Mexican food.
They do, but the Mexican food there is terrible.
Yeah.
It is, everything has mayonnaise in it. It's so bad.
Ooh, ouch.
Yeah, it's really bad. So I'm doing that. I'm also running this website called A+, talking about the kind of setup financially that we were just talking about. It's completely funded by Asahi, but I have total editorial control,
Cool.
And it's kind of supposed to be like Lucky Peach meets Nation's Restaurant News. It's for the hospitality.
Wow, that's a big deal. I love that.
Wow. It's for the hospitality community, but we just do one long form piece a month and real deep dive into something.
Love it.
I just had a piece come out yesterday that's about how can a single restaurant change a town totally, and looking at a couple of places in Australia where that's happened. We've done deep dives on wage theft, and it's a really fun job. So I'm editing that and writing for them occasionally, but I'm the editor-in-chief of that. So that's fun. And then still freelancing like an idiot because I don't have time. But well,
you love it.
I love it.
You love the journalism.
I love it. I do. And as much as it's been really good for me to be home in my city, being able to swim at my pool every day, being able to see my family, I really do miss the broader, bigger cultural stories that you get to tell when you're doing travel stories for smart people or bigger cultural food stories. This time I spent working for the New York Times in Australia was just so nourishing professionally.
Yeah, I love that section. So, Melissa and Priya are temporary now, and they might be searching for a new. Are you putting your hat in the ring for that?
The New York Times knows me very well. I think if they were interested, they would have told me.
Okay.
I mean, it just seems like I was a critic for them for years, and that job it's such a blessing and a curse,
I
right?
know.
Like, I don't even know how I'd feel about it. It's, again, one of those things that you probably can't turn down if it's given to you. But, like,
Exactly. I love
God.
to see you in New York. I love Melissa and Priya, and, they may take that role, but if
Mm-hmm.
they decide not to, I'd love to see you reviewing in New York City.
I would love to. I would love to come back to New York and be able to, because this is where I started.
Yeah, I know.
And I love it. I mean, I've just been here for 2 days now, and I'm like, God, I love this city. But
Happy to hear it.
yeah, it's but it's also, God, it's such a burden to take on that kind of responsibility. It's such a huge
It's
responsibility.
a tough job, but
Yeah.
but you're built for it. Obviously,
Yeah.
you've done it, and
I don't know how to do anything else. So.
Well, yeah, and also just respect for the critics, like all critics, putting yourself out there.
Yeah,
Just give some respect.
yeah.
Besha, on This Is Taste, we ask guests about their discerning taste. So to close this interview, here's a little rapid fire, fast and furious taste check. Are
Okay.
you ready?
I'm ready.
The best fruit.
Peach,
The worst vegetable.
parsnip.
Why?
It's bitter. It's like I'm not into that sweet bitter thing.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I'm not. Yeah, it's But,
And you were reviewing in the days of the puree. Which
yeah,
had its moment.
I just actually had a very parsnip puree heavy meal a couple of weeks ago. I mean, I can tell if it's good. If people like parsnips, I'm not going to be like, this is bad because I don't like parsnips, but I don't like parsnips.
As an aside, where have you been going in the States? I should ask at the jump. But
I mean, I have had. I'm going to Kabawa tonight.
Oh, cool,
Like
great.
that's the thing that I'm really excited
Yeah,
about
he's
is
great,
seeing
Paul
what Paul's
Carmichael.
doing. I in LA, I just like shoved so many burritos in my face.
Yeah.
That's all I did. And yeah, I'm going to Atlanta tomorrow, so going to Ticonderoga, which is really
Cool.
exciting. Yeah, so I just go. I go to the places that I'm nostalgic for more than
as
like
you
the
should.
new fun places. Which
obviously,
yeah,
Ticonderoga, that's a great little
Mhm.
spot. All right, what's your typical breakfast?
coffee with milk.
No, nothing else.
Nothing else. No,
Yeah.
I got to save it. I would weigh 400 pounds if I just
Yeah,
ate the way normal people eat and then ate the way that I eat. So,
Yeah.
coffee.
coffee, and then you're just getting to work.
Hmm.
The best dessert.
So my dad was kind of like an acolyte of Julia Child, and he made chocolate mousse that had, no gelatin in it, all egg whites and cream, and it's just like it was like so ethereal. Like you couldn't put it in the fridge; it would just collapse. It was just like whipped egg whites with cream in it, and so much dark chocolate, and then he would grate dark chocolate over the top, and it was just like I've tried to recreate it. I can get kind of close.
It's like
but-
a la minute.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you refrigerate it, but
Oh.
like it's really only good for like 5 hours,
I see, I see, I
mean,
see.
it's still good the next day, but it's kind of deflated.
Yeah,
and anyway, that's the best. I don't know where he got the recipe from. It might be a Julia Child. I don't think so. But anyway, I've been trying to recreate it and I can't.
A restaurant you wish you could bring back from the dead.
Gray's Papaya.
I love that choice.
I was so I think I may have shed a tear when I had, because I went to
Wow.
school at the New School and
Yeah.
I was so broke and I just lived on those
Reception
hot dogs
special.
and that it was like a slice or a Gray's Papaya or a bagel. That was my dinner most days. So.
When you're craving American fast food, where are you going?
So the only I know this is going to sound super snobbish of me, but the only fast food that I really crave is like a breakfast biscuit.
Yeah.
And I will eat that almost anywhere. There are places in the South that do it. Biscuitville is probably the best if we were talking fast food. But, I will eat it at Popeyes. I will eat it at McDonald's. I will eat a sausage, egg, and cheese biscuit from almost anyone. Yeah.
Biscuits, man.
Mm-hmm.
God, that sounds good. Right
Yeah, I know. My
a
God.
great
And that's
call.
one of the things that I don't have in Australia
No.
that I am really sad about.
No one has
No one.
brought it over.
No. There was one guy who was doing a fried chicken sandwich on a big biscuit for a
Yeah.
while, and people in Melbourne didn't get it, and now the fried chicken sandwich comes on a bun.
Oh, they couldn't even.
No.
Oh, the biscuit. Yeah, it's a local taste. It just maybe doesn't
Yeah.
work. What is your favorite city in the world to visit for food?
Oh, I'm Los Angeles. I mean,
Yeah.
I know that, yeah. And then if we're saying outside America, I would be remiss to not say Melbourne because I do feel that way. I also again, such a cliche. I love Paris so much.
Mhm.
And kind of random, what's really great is Brazil. Both cities, and that really, really incredible food there, which I was not necessarily expecting. That's one of the places that I'm like, need to go back.
Yeah, I love that. Last one, your favorite sandwich?
So much depends on what mood you're in or where you are in the world, but I'll tell you about the kind of most important favorite sandwich to me, which is if you go to Tarrytown, New York, and you go to the deli on Main Street, and there's like a bench outside of it that kind of looks over, it might be North Tarrytown, which is now called Sleepy Hollow, much to my horror. There's a bench that like looks out over the Hudson River, and if you go into that deli and you get like a hero with turkey, Munster cheese, lettuce, salt and pepper mayonnaise, and you go sit on that bench, and it's like, Helen Rosner was talking about how like the most important ingredient in a sandwich is air.
I love that.
It was very smart of her. And it's got that, the shaved lettuce, so it's got like the air in it, and then just like something. It's just, that is to me like one of the most important sandwich memories in my life, and I try to recreate it whenever I'm in New York, anywhere in New York. Nobody else can do it. It's only a New York thing.
It's that lettuce and the space between the lettuce.
The space between the lettuce, and then the kind of fudginess of the meat with the cheese, and then the creaminess of the and then you got to get like good salt and pepper.
Always got a salt and pepper sandwiches at the deli.
Yep.
Besha, Rodell, this has been so much fun. So great to catch up with you. Thank you so much for joining This Is Taste.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is Taste is hosted and produced by Eliza Barbanel and me, Matt Rodbard. The show is edited by lead producer Clayton Gumbert and supervised by Pat Stango, Director of Media Production and Development at Penguin Random House. Thanks to Shalia Harris and the production team at Penguin Random House. Theme music by Steve Rydell. Logo and guest illustrations by Ellie Skurzat. Visit Taste online at tastecooking.com and make sure to subscribe to our newsletter to keep updated on all cool things in the world of taste.